Hey, before we get started here, make sure you do a couple of things. Would ya? Would ya? How about you like, you subscribe, and you comment to our OutKick page? Look, if you do that, then you get a gold star. You do. You get a little gold star, and you don't miss Charlie. You don't miss me. You don't miss Clay. You don't miss Hot Mike. You don't miss Tommy. You don't miss Tyrus. You don't miss any of the greatness that is here on OutKick, the fastest, most important news organization, sports organization, political organization in the history of the world. That's what we are. All right, let's get right to it. I stand with Pat McAfee. I will always stand with Pat McAfee. See, Pat McAfee has come to ESPN and rejuvenated the joint. Now, here's Pat McAfee and his crew. Here's Stephen A. Smith and his crew over here. And don't think for a second, I don't care what any of these clowns say on the Stephen A. Smith side. They don't like Pat. There's a lot of racial tension out of Stephen A. Smith and the DEI hires of ESPN towards Pat. You don't ever see guys on Pat's show, do you? No. Why? Because they're jealous. It's no different than the WNBA being jealous of Caitlin Clark. The little kids of the WNBA can't stand that here comes Caitlin Clark dominating the scene after they've been there for so many years. Same thing with Stephen A. Smith and the kids over at ESPN. And in ESPN, it doesn't just include the children. It doesn't just include the Stephen A. Smiths. It doesn't just include the African-American world. It doesn't. No. It's the higher-ups. Let me explain. So Pat McAfee has a very popular show that he brings to the draft. He brings to the combine. He brings to the Super Bowl. Big stage set up. We were over there. Gary, our boss, and I went over. We were talking to Pat. We were on his stage. Now, here's the deal. Pat's saying no to going to the draft. A lot of people are upset. A lot of people are wondering why. Pat's show is incredibly popular. He shredded, and I'll get to it here in a second. Middle management is what he called it. Middle management for being so difficult that he's out of the draft. He's done. He's not going to the 2025 NFL draft. The NFL is making it very easy for us to do stuff, Pat said, speaking sarcastically. It's really kind of them. It's very cool. It's very appreciative of the opportunity to showcase your shit. That's what Pat has to say. All right. There's the screenshot. Pat McAfee will not be taking his show to the NFL draft after being treated with what he says was insufficient respect by middle managers at the scouting combine. All right, here's what Pat had to say. Here's a video he put out last night.
So during the break, I decided that if there's a narrative being built about me that isn't true, I should just address it. You know, it got to the point where there were so many of them about me. If I was to address every single thing that was being said that was bullshit, even though the quotes in the whole show was already out there, I would be spending my entire life addressing bullshit. So with that being said, I don't think I've ever said insufficient respect in my life. Now, granted, was there a lack of respect? For sure. But the combine and the draft, two different events. Okay, combine, got approved to be there. That was going to be a big deal. Lucky to be there. Then, a few days beforehand, some people at that middle level who have power wanted to flex the fact that they have power, I think. Created some problems, obviously. I'm going to have to sign off on this. I'm going to have to see this. You can't do this. You can't do that. This is what I'm saying, yada, yada. All bullshit, you know. And I adhered to all of it. I even went down and did a site survey by myself with a tape measure to make sure there was enough room in the stadium for our set, which, once again, I thought Combine Week was awesome. Hoops were made for us to jump through for no reason, because I think I'm younger than these people, so they think they can. I don't think they get it. But nonetheless, draft was the same thing. Just like where they wanted to put us, allegedly, how it was going to go, what we were going to have to do. Just like flexing power while also showcasing disdain for me and my show and my guys, all at the same time, while we have a relationship with the actual league, I think. So it's an interesting time. With that being said, I don't want to play their games. So we said we're not going to the draft. But it wasn't directly because of the insufficient respect from the combine. But it is a lack of it on a regular basis from one group of people just making life harder on everybody.
There you go. Now, there's a combination of things there. You think this is about ESPN, which I do. I was texting with Pat last night, and Pat's a realist. Pat understands that, you know what, it's easy, or he can be unliked by a lot of people. But let me explain something to you. See, the NBA, NFL, and ESPN has a golden goose here. They have the rare media guy that attracts all audience. He attracts football audience. He attracts social audience. Somebody says, I like watching Pat. He has people that don't like him, which is attractive as well. He goes on the set of Game Day and basically saves the show. His set and what he did at the Combine was the biggest show in there. So the NFL has a former player that is a willing participant to showcase the league. Guys in that league get clout by coming on Pat's show. Now, you name me another show that they do. You can tell me all those shows on NFL Network, but no. Pat's show is different. Pat's show is special. And you're not going to find it again. Michael Strahan, he went corporate. Pat didn't. People like that. Anybody that you see on TV, CBS or Fox, they're buttoned up. Fox a lot less so than CBS, but when talking about the NFL, it's heavily regulated. Pat isn't regulated. That makes him attractive. Hell, even the commissioner has been on the show. So the NFL and ESPN have made it difficult for Pat. Let's talk about ESPN for just a second. Stephen A. Smith came out and tried to debunk a story that I talked about, that I know this for sure, that there are those at ESPN led by Stephen A. Smith that don't like Pat. They're jealous of Pat. Same way the little girls of the WNBA are jealous of Caitlin Clark. The question is why? You've got a golden goose. Write it. No, that's not how it works in TV. A lot of people, when Pat came in, Norby Williamson and others couched it as if Pat was taking away jobs from other people because they're paying him so much. Why would you do that, Norby? Why would anybody in upper management do that? Why wouldn't you couch it as we've got this young star, let's make it easy for him? I'll tell you why. Because there are those in that building that are jealous of Pat McAfee. There are those in that building that feel Pat McAfee doesn't have the journalistic chops. We'll get into the journalistic chops with Stan Verrett here in a minute. But that's what they feel. They feel like he doesn't have the wherewithal, the chops, to be a journalist. Oh, okay. There's no journalism degrees in Pat's Thunderdome over here. That's right. People are jealous because Pat can swear. Pat can say what he wants, right? Maybe it's political stuff. Maybe Pat hasn't shown his ass by leaning to the left like most of them have. You see what Stephen A. Smith is doing. Stephen A. Smith is trying to build a bigger thing by becoming a politician. But Pat is viewed as the Antichrist in that building. And it started when he showed up, when Norby Williamson, who is not a middle manager, Norby was at the top of management, tried to circumvent him. Talking about bad ratings, talking about people losing their job. But Pat's used to this. Pat understands this. When Pat was a punter here with the Colts, Pat ran afoul of the law his first year. And I said at the time, he gave the greatest apology that I have ever heard. But there were still people here in Indianapolis that said, wait a second, we don't like you. Go jump in a canal. And it was all bullshit. It was all jealousy. And now it's no different. Pat has made his own way in the media, just like Caitlin Clark made her own way through the WNBA, to the top of the WNBA, to first team all-league. If you were going to give a Mount Rushmore of current broadcasters in sports and media, Pat McAfee is on that Mount Rushmore. Pisses those at ESPN off. Just like I said, it pisses the women of the WNBA off. Let me give you another way to look at it. Both sides. WNBA women. Angel Reese came out and said we should be paid like NBA players. Of course, that's preposterous. One of the reasons you play half the season. The other reason is nobody's watching you. However, if all of you stopped with the stupid and banded together with and around Caitlin Clark, you would get paid more. Your ratings, which are going great, would take off even farther. More money would pour into the league, but you can't because of jealousy. If ESPN would stop with the stupid, the Kendrick Perkins, all the idiots that you see on this side fighting against Pat and his crew on this side and come together, guess what you'd have? You'd have a stronger ESPN. You'd have a more likable ESPN. Look, I'm sure ESPN's ratings are just fine for shows not sports related. Back up. I'm sure ESPN's ratings are fine for shows that aren't live games. I'm sure they're fine. But they ain't like they used to be. People had to watch SportsCenter. You had to do that. You had to listen to Mike and Mike in the morning. It's just what you did. That was a more together group. That whole thing. You were on one mission to provide sports to people. Then politics came in. And the next thing you know, social justice warriors were hired. I'll get to that in a minute. And a fraction came, and then here comes the lone white guy. The lone white guy in this whole mix that got and set above the rest, and jealousy ensued. Not just from African Americans. Oh, no. All of those guys, divisions were drawn. You want to be on our show? Don't go on Pat's show. That's a fact, Jack. You want to come with us? You want to come with him? That's a fact, Jack. And everybody can deny it, and they're full of shit. And I got it all right in here. Don't even try it. So I get it. I guess human nature's a bitch. Human nature of the women of the WNBA, they can't accept Caitlin Clark because her game's more dynamic, and she's a straight white girl. The people, including middle managers at ESPN and other places, whether it's the NFL, both, can't accept the fact and embrace the fact that here is a guy doing a show every day that the millions and millions and millions of Americans love. And he's doing about mostly the sport that millions and millions and millions of Americans love, football. And he's doing it with a personality. And he's doing it with the total respect of the participants, not just Aaron Rodgers. Everybody wants to go on Pat's show, and they can't accept it. What if they did? What if they stopped with the little girl of the WNBA mentality and embraced one another? What if the folks that are dividing up ESPN decided we would all win? Pat would win, they would win, we would win as viewers. But you can't. You can't because you're dealing with children. The WNBA, children. People hating on Pat McAfee, children. Why make it harder for the Golden Goose? Why make it harder in the WNBA for Caitlin Clark? Why make it harder on television for Pat McAfee? Should make it easier. But man, oh man, you just can't. You just can't because jealousy, pettiness always gets in the way. I stand with Pat McAfee. Screw these idiots. Pat McAfee's show is more popular. If ESPN told him to go away tomorrow, he'd be just fine. If ESPN told these clowns to go away tomorrow, you'd never hear from him again. That's a fact, Jack. All right, speaking of ESPN, here's one of the reasons why ESPN is failing. Their personalities are unlikable. Just unlikable. You know, they shipped a guy named Stan Verrett out. They shipped him out to L.A. They put him with a guy who was great. But Stan Verrett's not. Stan Verrett on ESPN ran a segment last week, in fact, of OutKick's conversation with Ravens kicker Justin Tucker, the beleaguered Justin Tucker, the guy who's getting in all kind of Deshaun Watson-type difficulty. And when I say Deshaun Watson-type difficulty, you understand what I'm saying. Oh, man, the masseuses are out. And that's what's happening to Tucker. 16 massage therapists accused Tucker of nefarious conduct. Handsy, grabby, exposy. Okay. Tucker and his wife vehemently denied it. Bobby Barack got exclusive quotes in an article. SportsCenter anchor Stan Verrett was talking about it. He repeatedly referred to us as some internet outlet. And Verrett went out of his way and undermined his own segment by throwing a tantrum over the source of the news. OutKick lives rent-free in little Stanny's head. Hell, I don't even know the clown, but I looked, and I'm blocked by him on Twitter. I'm guessing that's an OutKick thing. I ain't mad at it. I've never watched Stan Verrett. I never have. I think I was on a segment with him 100 years ago at ESPN, but I don't know. He's a nondescript guy. A viewer called Stan Verrett out. A viewer said, hey, Bobby Barack was watching SportsCenter last night. Stan Verrett referred to OutKick as an internet outlet when referencing the source of Justin Tucker's interview with you guys. Laugh my ass off. He was seething. Again, jealousy, pettiness. It's all there. Stan Verrett, Anyway, OutKick asked ESPN Public Relations and SportsCenter coordinating producer Aisha Cheney for comment. Neither responded on record, but two ESPN behind-the-scenes staffers who reviewed the segment confirmed a visibly upset Verrett refused to utter the word OutKick. Stan, baby, come on, dog. You can do it. Come on, Stan. You're really important. No, seriously, Stan, you're the face of the West Coast Sports Center. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Or don't. Either way, it's fun to make fun of you. While OutKick is no favorite among ESPN executives and producers, several of them apologized to us, noting that Verrett's behavior was unethical and a violation of Sports Center standards. Can you imagine the list of Sports Center standards? Don't say Trump. Don't say Republican. No white guys. No more than one white guy at any time. Those are the standards. Put simply, ESPN heads Jimmy Pitino and Burke Magnus are afraid to discipline Verrett because he will almost certainly, as he always does, respond with the race card. Look, that's every person at ESPN that isn't white. White guy goes in there, claims the race card, you get laughed at. Guy like Verrett, you're like, yo, Stan, what's going on here? They've all seen what happened. They all saw what happened to Sage Steele, and they all ready to pull that bad boy out quickly. Seriously. Verrett has been unusually focused on OutKick since at least 2020. In June of that year, he started following Bobby Barack on Twitter and then directly messages him to call OutKick founder Clay Travis a racist and telling Bobby Barack to go F himself. Now, Stan Verrett's about that tall, about that thin, about that smart. So, of course, he would go into a DM and say, go F yourself. Now, if he saw Bobby, who's not much bigger, he would probably cower or use his big mouth as he's walking away. But the truth of the matter is there are none of these folks at ESPN that have any degree of toughness other than the ex-players. That's it. These anchor guys are such little douchebags, it would be literally Ron Burgundy if you cut off their teleprompter. They literally know nothing about sports. They are there to fulfill a check. Oh, Asian, half Asian. That's it. Let's throw it back to a Meghan Kelly tweet about Stan Verrett. Big man Stan likes to crap on women's rights with swagger. And then when called out on it by a woman, Stan runs for cover like a scared weakling. That's every guy and girl you see hosting SportsCenter. Everyone. Not the athletes. Athletes are tough dudes. Even Ryan Clark, I mean, the dude hit hard. But the Stan Verretts, the L. Duncans, all these people are weak-minded DEI hires that know they got a race card right there in their pocket. And the boys on the building 4 on that campus in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th floor, whatever it is, are scared to death of that race card. So you can't discipline Verrett. There are no standards at SportsCenter for Stan Verrett and others. They can do whatever they want. Hell, ESPN let that clown L. Duncan break into a woman's game to lie about a bill she called Don't Say Gay, and it wasn't that. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Go get them, Burke Magnus. It's not too bad. No, Burke, it's not. Swear to God, we here at OutKick, even all of us get called names every day. It's not bad, Berkey. You'll be okay, sweetie. I had dinner with Burke Magnus once. Nice guy. Speaking of ESPN, and this had to be hard for them, they have canceled the toxic television program Around the Horn. The last day is going to be May 23rd. I'll get that. After 23 years on the network, it started out pretty good. You had a bunch of journalists giving their opinions on topics, and Woody Page would write something behind him, and it would be funny. And then it became, political. Then we had to listen to Sarah Spain. Then we had to listen to Kevin Blackistone. Then we had to listen to all the nonsense of the crazy far-left liberals that ruled the roost at ESPN. And when you get that, you know the saying, go woke, go broke, and they gone. They should be gone. Reports are telling OutKick that ESPN management prefers to expand pardon the interruption, to an hour to replace the 30-minute show after its last day. And though we feel for the producers and staffers affected by the position, ESPN should have canceled that show years ago, and here's why. The show represented the worst of ESPN. I think we would all agree with that. As evidenced by the list of personalities the network thanked for their contribution: Jamel Hill, Bomani Jones, Mina Kimes, Kevin Blackistone, Sarah Spain, and Clinton Yates, all who added nothing to the national conversation about sports. They tried hard to make their political opinions important, and in some cases, they've grifted themselves into a lot of money. But the truth of the matter is, not one of those people can report with any authenticity about the actual world of sports. In fact, I would argue there's nothing authentic about any of them. Zero, zip. And when you watch them, you'll know what I'm talking about. But good for them. They saw a movement, they jumped on it. ESPN, well, they accentuated that movement. Next thing you know, it gone. It gone. You couldn't do it during the summer of love, where idiots went and burned down city after city after city. No, you couldn't do it then. You had to wait a minute. ESPN, I'm assuming the dudes in the fourth building, number 4, on the 7th floor, pretty much said, yeah, we got to do something. But they get cover because Tony Kornheiser is beloved. Mike Wilbon, their show is beloved, and Mike is African-American. That gives them their cover. But getting rid of Bomani Jones and Spain and Jamel Hill and Mina Kimes and all the rest on that show, probably a pretty good idea. Did we throw Pablo Torre in there? Or Stugat? Or the rest of the little kids at ESPN? The program reached its lowest point when J.A. Adande criticized Americans for sympathizing with the Muslim Uyghur in China. Adande shamelessly, this was so ridiculous, claimed red state voting laws, listen to this, are just as evil as the genocide China commits against Uyghurs, which is genocide. Let me say it again, genocide. Now, I don't say the name right, Uyghurs, maybe that is right, but my God, you're comparing, I don't know, having to show an ID, getting off your fat ass and going to a voting poll like you have for 1,000 years, you're comparing that to genocide? That dude, Adande, is a very, very, very liked professor of journalism at Northwestern, which is amazing. It's amazing that Northwestern didn't have the stones to fire him. I mean, what does Northwestern care? Hey, Northwestern, you're racist. Yeah, so what? Give us $100,000, come to school, and you got a Northwestern degree. But anyway, they couldn't do it. It's amazing, really. They couldn't do it. ESPN, of course, never addressed the matter, and the video clip of Adande's argument remains live on ESPN's official X page today. Anscape, baby. Oh, man, last summer, Around the Horn gained ground zero, for ugly, racially charged coverage of Caitlin Clark. Notably, David Dennis Jr., whose only claim to fame is he's the son of a guy that was a leader during the civil rights movement. He defended the black women in the WNBA, targeting and hard-fouling Clark. He defended this, okay, saying she has a responsibility as a privileged white woman to stand up for black women, even if they bully her. You're an idiot. Well, why didn't Diana Taurasi have the same thing? Huh? Why didn't Diana Taurasi have the same thing? Taurasi just retired. Nobody ever bullied her, and nobody ever felt like she had to stand up for black women. You want me to tell you? I'll tell you, Taurasi's game wasn't interesting. Taurasi's game didn't make all the other black women jealous. Caitlin Clark's, she made them all jealous. She made them all crazy, legitimately crazy. Caitlin Clark legitimately made African-American lesbians in the WNBA crazy. Crazy. Insane. Diana Taurasi didn't. Why didn't anybody say Diana Taurasi was supposed to stand up? Never heard that, not one time. But Caitlin Clark did. In other words, nearly everyone on the show specializes in one field: feigning racial hysteria and calling white people racist. Hence the addition of that Dennis character. We must talk Dennis. Here's a shocker. Race hustler David Dennis Jr. is blaming, you got to wait for this one, he's blaming the Dallas Mavericks for Kyrie Irving's unfortunate ACL tear. Now, say it with me. It's the Mavericks' fault. claiming that they played him too many minutes for someone who is 32 years old. The dude's a grown-ass man. He'll play as many minutes as he'll tell you he'll play. Jesus. Before taking the Disney-owned website, Anscape, to further slam the Maverick. It is never anybody's fault. Here is David Dennis Jr.
Perk, I share your hope and optimism that Kyrie will bounce back, but I cannot help but think that the indelible, lasting, tragic image of the Dallas Mavericks post the Luka Doncic trade is Anthony Davis in street clothes carrying a hobbling Kyrie Irving off to end his season with a torn ACL. This is after Dallas said that the major reason that they were trading Luka Doncic was because of health concerns. And now you have the two big stars out probably for the rest of the season. And some of this was avoidable. Dallas has to eat the fact that they have been playing Kyrie Irving, who has been injury prone, more minutes than anybody else in the league at age 32. They have to hold that loss and think about what they have done.
Bob. Whatever. The Mavericks inexplicably have run Irving into the ground since the Doncic trade. He's averaged 39 minutes a game, the most in the league during that time span. It's an absurd amount of use. Man, 39 minutes. Awful. For a 32-year-old with his own extensive injury history, Irving was giving it all on the court as his team was falling apart. All right. Okay. It's always someone's fault, man. Someone else's fault. All right. If not for a series of dumbfounded decisions from the Mavericks franchise, Irving would be spending this month getting ready for a deep playoff run with one of the best 5 players in the league in Doncic. Irving deserved better. He didn't deserve shit. Let me tell you something. Kyrie Irving doesn't deserve jack shit. He deserves a contract that he's got, and that's it. You're paid to play basketball. You don't want to play basketball, don't sign the contract. You don't want to play basketball the way the NBA is set up. Get your agent to bitch, whine, and moan. Go in to see management and say, I don't want to play that many minutes. Short of that, you're a grown-ass man. That's what all these idiots say. I'm a grown-ass man. He's a grown-ass man. Well, then act like a grown-ass man. Tell him this is what my body can handle. Don't you know your own body? What? Oh, just stop blaming everybody else. But it's what we do, regardless of the ending. What this all means for the Mavericks, Irvin's year-long climb back to the spot as a respected, beloved, and awe-inspiring phenom is one of the great accomplishments of his career. Yay, Rod, go fight, win. Hey, speaking of Caitlin Clark, God, I love this show. In the Caitlin Clark era of women's basketball, the sport continues to take off with decent gains in viewership, and the best indicator of that growth is ESPN's viewership over the past 2 seasons without broadcasting a majority of her games, as Fox and the Big Ten Network did most of the broadcast. Listen to this. ESPN's viewership figures are largely Clark-free, meaning that when control for the Clark bump, women's hoops is still on a growth trajectory. The network, ESPN's women's college basketball audience, is up 3% versus last year and a whopping 44% versus 2 years ago. Some of the sports detractors have criticized Clark as being the only draw in college basketball. All right. Yay, Rob. ESPN has aired 15 women's college basketball games with audiences over 500,000 viewers this year. 2 greater than last year with the opportunity to add more. No doubt the sport's overall viewership across all networks will be down this year without a generational television draw like Clark, but it's clear her impact has raised the baseline for women's college basketball, both college and pro, as we told you it would. See, you got to understand something. As much as people bitch, whine, and moan about ESPN's programming, which is god-awful, ridiculous, and stupid, games are games, man. They tell you in broadcasting school, at least they told me when I went to ESPN, the great Bart Fox, Scott Johnson, and Davey O'Brien told me, hey, man, the games are the thing. Don't interfere with the game. Add to the game. And that's right. And Caitlin Clark's game elevated the entire sport. And, again, I go back to something. Everybody in that space should be so appreciative of Caitlin Clark, but they just can't be. They can't. It's amazing to me. But you know what? Everyone's getting fat on her. So hope it lasts, because I tell you what, Juju Watkins is coming next, and she's damn good. Damn good. She dynamic like Caitlin Clark? Don't think so. But she's better than Caitlin Clark as an overall talent. Just saying. We tell you the truth every time. Remember we told you that Brandon Johnson, the new mayor of Chicago, was, well, frankly, going to be worse than Lori Lightfoot, the ex-mayor? We're always on top of things. Why is that? I don't know. Hey, Dan, I'd imagine you say this is a bad thing to say publicly. When asked if he had any desire to take another job, I'm like Ron Burgundy. You put it on here, I'll read it. Rick Pitino gave an answer that probably has his agent a little bit baffled. Why would I leave? Red flag. Red flag. When you ask your kids or you ask your wife a question, and they answer with a question, 90% of the time they're lying. Maybe not here, but 90%. Why would I leave? Where am I going to go that I would want to leave? Indiana. This is New York City, the greatest city in the world. This is a program that's in the top 10. I'm overpaid right now. They should take some money away from me. Yeah, they should. I love these kind of things from old coaches. Larry Brown famously said, I don't care about the money. I'd go coach high school. That's my dream job. Yeah, okay. All right, they should take money away from me. I don't need anything. My agent's going to kill me for saying that because he keeps saying you're not in the top 5 of Big East coaches. He's going to kill me now. Rick Pitino, nothing mattered until he said you're not in the top 5 of Big East coaches. He's talking about top 5 payment. Rick Pitino is slick, but he ain't slicker than me. You can't bullshit a bullshitter. That's what this whole thing is about. Rick Pitino is not in the top 5. He wants to be in the top 5. Deep down, he's insulted about not being in the top 5. That's why this comment was in there. If he wasn't, it wouldn't be in there. But it is. Pitino, here you go, is very calculated with what he says to the media. Maybe claiming he's overpaid is an attempt at getting everyone to buy in on the idea of him finishing his career at St. John's. But Pitino should also feel confident that he'll still hold the leverage when it's time to negotiate a new contract. Yeah, I don't know about that last part, but what I do know is he's telling his school, I'm not in the top 5. He used top 10 in the country and then top 5. These idiots at Awful Announcing for Right maybe got it right. But here's the deal. That anything you heard in that little soliloquy, it don't matter. The only thing that mattered is Pitino is telling you my team is in the top 10 and my salary is not in the top 5 in my own league. Why would I leave? I'll tell you why you'd leave. Who the hell at your age wants to live in New York City? Go live in Bloomington where you got a whole state behind you. You got a few people in a city behind you. Jamaica, New York, come on. It's hard to park your car. It's a pain in the ass. Bloomington, you go there, you got $17,000 on a Sunday afternoon for Chicago State. What are you talking about? You could be the only guy and will be the only guy ever to win national championship at Kentucky, Louisville, and Indiana. There's why you would leave. Where would you go? I told you where you would go. This stuff ain't that hard, but people are really dumb that try to, I don't know, talk about it. All right, TV douchebag, Andy Cohen. I don't know why we're talking about Andy Cohen, but I like watching the shows Andy Cohen produces. Housewives of the OC, Housewives of Beverly Hills, Housewives of New Jersey, Housewives of New York. I ain't mad at it. Used to watch the Housewives of Atlanta. I don't know if they've taken a hiatus or I just missed them, but I like the Housewives of Atlanta. Andy Cohen got into a little social media spat over biological men playing in women's sports with Meghan McCain and former volleyball player Peyton McNabb, who suffered brain damage when she was injured by a transgender opponent years ago. Andy Cohen, obviously very gay, raising kids. Okay, let's see what Andy has to say. Surprised you're buying into the vilification of the trans community given the real problems happening in this country. Your previous allyship of the LGBTQ community and the fact that this is not issues affecting about 4 people in this country. Well, it's affecting a lot more than that. There are over hundreds of awards that were in women's sports that have gone to dudes acting like women. And it's only going to get more. And what is happening here for Meghan McCain and Peyton McNabb and us and, well, basically everybody is we're trying to protect women's sports, Riley Gaines and others. We're trying to say, look, let's not make this a thing where women's sports is now dominated by men. It's pretty simple, Andy. But I know you're all emotional, Andy, because that's what you do. All right, Peyton McNabb responded, Andy, calling the protection of women's sports a non-issue that affects 4 people is not just dismissive, it's factually wrong. Hundreds of female athletes have lost podium spots, scholarships, and opportunities. My own injury was life-changing. And even if it were just one girl, that's one too many. This is about fairness and safety, not vilification. Here's what Meghan McCain had to say. Surprised you're okay with violence against women athletes. Meghan suffered serious brain damage. Just one story. You have my cell. Always happy to talk privately or publicly on either of our shows because these conversations are reductive to hash out on social media. They are. Can't really get anything done on social media, but Andy Cohen doesn't understand the issue. What happens in these instances is a guy like Cohen blindly follows the LGTB narrative. Doesn't really understand the whole deal, and it's evidenced by his tweets. Andy Cohen, just stay in your lane. Let all of us adults out here that don't care to tell everybody who we're stupid, that don't care to let everybody know what our sexuality is, that actually pay attention to the facts. Let us handle this, Andy. You go get Teresa a cabaret show. You go get Teresa more makeup, a facelift, and for God's sake, bring Joe back. He's over in Italy. He's been deported. Get his ass back here.